This is the Kohler Cimarron Class 5 toilet, the original Class 5, introduced all the way back in circa 2005. Unfortunately, this would be the pathway Kohler would pave in the future. The Cimarron Class 5 would be kind of short-lived. Even though it would be made in the mid-2000s, it would be made up until circa 2009 when it would be replaced with the Cimarron Class 6, which is a lot more common and popular. If this was the future of Kohler, then it was not looking so bright. Well, let's take a look and see what went wrong with this toilet, and trust me, it's everything. For starters, I will say the overall design is definitely interesting, to say the least. Definitely a little plain, but at least it stands out in a certain way. There you can see the iconic Class 5 passages. And there's the iconic trapway opening we would be getting accustomed to, for better or for worse. The tank parts are actually a little bit different than you might think. Obviously the handle is replaced on this one, but you probably know what the Cimarron handle looks like anyway. The fluid master fill valve is a stupid red top, you know how much I hate those. And you actually have a flapper in here instead of an aqua piston. The aqua piston didn't really come until the Class 6 Cimarron, but although some earlier Class 5s eventually did start having an aqua piston. Now I will mention that earlier Class 5s like this one were 1.6 gallons. The Cimarron was exclusively 1.6 gallons up until the Class 6, which they would also offer the 1.2 gallon version. So let's have a look at a flush out of 1.6. Yet the flush still manages to suck. So you're probably waiting to hear me repeat the same facts I went over with the Kohler Wellworth Hotline Class 5 video. That's kind of what I'll do here, but it's actually a little bit different considering this was an early Class 5. The pulling and siphon factor on earlier Class 5s like this were not very good. While they did have longevity due to the 1.6, as you can see, it's still rather choppy, and you can see that it regurgitates a lot, which of course is what most Class 5s are known for, unless you hold down the handle, but even then, like with this one, it really isn't much better. Something else different compared to some later Class 5s is that the performance on these earlier Cimarron Class 5 toilets were absolute crap. These things were known for clogging every now and then. Now, while Class 5s nowadays don't seem to have that much of a problem unless you do press releases, these earlier ones were definitely some of the worst performing Class 5s out there. Now let's have a look at ball rinse. As you can see, the ball rinse is still garbage, even on 1.6 gallons. You may have slightly noticed, but this back rim, especially between these two parts here, missed rinse. Which, well, that just goes to show you what you were in for when the Class 5s became more common. And unfortunately, that was the case. The ball rinse is garbage. Here's another angle. And that is the Kohler Cimarron Class 5 toilet. The beginning of the end, again, for Kohler Residential Toilets. This, unfortunately, would be the future of most Kohler toilets, going down the Class 5 and 6 pathway. Obviously, nowadays have Revolution 360, but it's basically kind of like a modified Class 5 with different trapway openings. This, unfortunately, was not a good sign of things to come when Modern Kohler came around, because a lot of crap like this still exists today, and some of it's even worse. But this was obviously a terrible start of things to come. But let's put this toilet into the grading scale and let's grade it. Usually I would compare the scores compared to the Modern Kohler Hotline Wellworth Class 5, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to grade it as its own. It's going to be weird, but I kind of have my reasons for doing it. So let's get started. The overall design is definitely interesting. It looks fairly modern for its time considering it came out in the 2000s, and it actually doesn't look too bad, although it does have a little bit of plainness to it. At least it has its own style. I'll give it a 6. Well, at least it doesn't have the aqua piston, but it still has a crappy colored top fluid master fill valve. Everything else is pretty standard though. At least the flappers on these actually stay open, so I'll give the benefit of the doubt. Overall, I'll give the parts a 5. It would be higher if it wasn't for those color top fluid master fill valves. I hate those. Quality control is crap. Are you surprised? Not only do you have ball rinse problems and inconsistent rim jets, but you also got the fact that these things also have performance issues, which we'll touch up on later. Yeah, it's safe to say it's crap. It gets a 3. The trapway itself looks pretty smooth, but the trapway opening itself, not so much. Like the newer Woolworth and Highline Class 5 toilets I've graded, I'm going to give it the same grade of a 5. The flush is absolute crap, only being slightly extended by the 1.6 gallons. If it wasn't for that, it would suck even more. But that isn't really saying much. It gets a 3. The pulling factor is pretty bad too. Again, the 1.6 slightly helps it compared to 1.28, but it's still not very good as it's still very choppy. It gets a 4. The performance is also pretty crappy too, considering that this is also 1.6 gallons. These things are fairly well known for clogging every now and then, and it was a common problem with these. Performance was slightly improved on later models, but this one was well known for being pretty crappy. It gets a 3. And now it's time to tackle one of the most infamous problems, ball rinse. It sucks. Granted, this is a pretty well known problem on many Class 5s out there, but this was the starting point. It sucks. Not only does it have straight down rim jets, it seems like some of the areas are pretty badly missed as well, especially the back rim. These things are known for gathering stains everywhere, even the front, which is pretty pathetic. The ball rinse is horrible and it gets a 2. Considering that these were only made for a few years and many of these are starting to get replaced, yeah, survivability is very low, it gets a 3. Now let's talk about the overall value of this toilet. If this was what Modern Kohler would be, well, this was a terrible start. This thing is loaded with so many problems, from performance, to the flush sucking, to the ball rinse being inconsistent. This thing was loaded with problems. And considering that this thing has a flapper, you would think it would be better. But no, that's not the case. Many modern Class 5s generally suck as is. While later models did improve the performance slightly, a lot of the problems that this thing has still remains. Except the pulling factor is somehow slightly worse due to the lower water usage. Safe to say, this was a sucky start to Modern Kohler, and it still sucks. It gets a 2 in value. The final score of the Kohler Cimarron Class 5 toilet is a 36 out of 100. If this was an introduction for what later Modern Kohler would be, it sucks. This thing has so many problems it's not even funny, and later versions will have the same exact problems too, maybe minus performance. What a terrible introduction for what Kohler would eventually fall down into. The beginning of the end. Again, for Modern Kohler Residential Toilets. Dark days were ahead.